All right, so this looks like if Pavlos or Minimat take this, then they could take the entire tournament. If Scott Call takes it, then that puts them all at 3, and it comes down to the tiebreaker.
Yep,
And if Bogus Rogus wins it, then it ends up being a bragging rights of I beat all the best people.
So Scott Call has to win inside Sol 6 at 4 in the afternoon.
Ooh,
So Sol 6, 1600.
tricky.
Which, yeah, is going to be really difficult. Here's the final round, then, of this January 2017 Newcomers tournament between Pavlos, Minimat, Scott Call, and Bogus Rogus. Pavlos and Minimat both on 3, Scott Call on 2, Bogus Rogus on 1, and alongside me here is Black Magic. We might see more scientist Black Magic.
We are definitely going to see there are 3 good scientific. There's one in the south, or I'm sorry, in the northeast corner, and then on the top and the bottom of the north area, right where Pavlos went, and then on the lower portion, you could still get a scientific spot there if you wanted to take advantage of that high steel price.
So Pavlos was first with the expansive found, and then Minimat with the scientist immediately after. Then who? Then Scott Call was third with the scavenger, and I quite like this scavenger. The water is going to be the issue, I think, for Scott Call, and Bogus Rogus with another scavenger. I think this might be a slightly better scavenger.
I end up liking Bogus Rogus is a little bit more just because you're a little bit closer to the resources that you need, so the water and things like that.
Oh,
yes,
is that a level 1 EMP from Bogus Rogus? That is really painful for Pavlos. That's going to hurt him so much.
That is bold. I could certainly see doing that just in order to slow him down a little bit more, but then it really just shifts the benefit to Scott Call in that case to be able to get to HQ2 and get those better resources.
It's also worth mentioning that he missed the EMP. I guess he targeted the iron tile just next to the 3.
Oh no!
Because none of them. He misclicked. So yeah, that'll be slightly less painful than maybe it should have been for Pavlos. But yeah, it's gonna be. I mean, that's just so frustrating when that happens to you. It's just rage-inducing that somebody has taken their level 1 upgrade. Basically, yeah, their level 2 upgrade to do that. And Bogus Rogue is actually really struggling to get to the level 2 upgrade. Nothing he's producing. Well, I guess he is producing the aluminum, so he gets there eventually. But yeah, he's got a huge stockpile of carbon.
So here's a note. So the I don't know that it'll necessarily come into play because we don't have any robotic players, but we do have a Russian colony. So eventually, at some point, the electronics could potentially be in play, but I think it's going to be quite a long time. I think glass is going to be your good bet right now.
Yep.
Because everybody is going to be consuming it.
And Scott Call has seen that. He's in glass, and they're doing very well for him. They're going to be $100 per tile, and I think that puts him in a really good position in this game. And wow, okay, so a mutiny. What was that? That was Scott Call's mutiny on the electrolysis reactor for Minimat to try and be annoying there, and he did not get it through the goon, and instead Minimat's going to say, thank you very much, I'll take your aluminum for the next 2 minutes. So that's what he's done there.
So I've got to really like Minimat's situation right now.
Yeah.
You're looking at a scientific with fantastic adjacent water tiles. You've got your steel there. You already have your aluminum claim, and most importantly, you don't have a ton of debt. So that's really where you can get into trouble if you're scientific and have a bunch of debt or found it early. But really, Minimat doesn't have that issue. So, and besides that, Pavlos was hit by that somewhat effective EMP early on. So,
yeah, that's just the hole that Pavlos has had to try and climb out of in this game. It's really difficult for him to do that. Scott Call going into a farm. Which I imagine is going to get some friends very soon indeed. Also being annoying and going after the water that's next to Minimat's base, which I quite like. I think that's okay, and that is his closest water, in fact. So completely fair enough on that one. You can make that a triangle.
So I would like to point out that let me take a look at it so far, but Bogus Rogus seems to have it really in for Pavlos because that's another slowdown strike against Pavlos.
Oh dear, yeah,
And
wow.
so you're looking at those two early black market over, after the exact same person to try to keep down that expansive, which is really helping Minimat because Minimat could just sit in the corner
Yeah,
and
Minimat just got slowed down by Scott Call, which I like a lot. That's the way to get at a scientist on the black market generally, is to get the slowdown strikes, because they don't get any immunity against that, in the same way that they do against EMPs.
So I want to take a look at what Minimat has done in terms of claims. So I don't really like the move there into wind turbines. I understand that you're about to have a windstorm, which is true. You can pay off a lot of your debt, but I'm wondering if Minimat could have potentially. Did Minimat upgrade before Scott Call?
I think so, yes.
Okay, well in that case, then that was a huge mistake in terms of not taking those two adjacent water.
Yeah, although I think Scott Call did take at least one of those at HQ2. So I think Minimat was... Yeah, I mean, he could only have taken the two, I think. The low and then the one that's still unclaimed.
You know what though? Just being able to take the that low water pump and then the other one to be able to put some food down directly adjacent to your base when food is at 173, that is a lot more.
Yeah,
that's a lot more important.
And
that being said, Minimat's gonna go for slant drilling.
Yeah, he's building a pattern lab right now, and yeah, this is an obvious farm triangle that he wants to make here, to get slant drilling just off that single one water tile. In fact, he's going to go ahead and build the farms anyway, in anticipation of the slant drilling, and also because water is still relatively low. Scott Call gets to 4 as well. Scott Call's in a lot of very profitable markets. That glass has stuck around as a very profitable market, as you would expect. All 4 of the players using that as their resource upgrade in this game. Also food, although food has been hit a little bit by the dust storm, it's still really profitable, even despite the dust storm at $50 a second, although that's debt at the moment rather than cash.
And now taking a look at, I mean, you have an HQ4 scientist and an HQ4 scavenger, and I mean the tie there with these really profitable markets. I mean, the tie goes to the scientists because they can make money, doing anything because they don't have to pay the resource costs. Now, I noticed that. Let's take a look at Minimat's base. There is no goon squad there.
Yeah, I was going to say, and Scott Call just spied out the pattern lab, so he knows there's no goon squad as well. So I wonder if we're going to see a mutiny dropped very, very shortly by Scott Call, who seems to have identified Minimat as his biggest competition in this game, and I think with very good reason.
And Scott Call has definitely has the black market cooldown, so that should be there's the mutiny. There's going to be the mutiny in a second. So Minimat had a fantastic move there, with one exception. Minimat went after the adrenaline boost.
Yeah. So he takes it back and then boosts it immediately. That's a really smart move. He knows Scott Call doesn't have the cooldown. The other players don't particularly seem interested, although Pavlos does get the EMP in just before slant drilling completes as well. So it's actually really going to hurt Minimat.
So the order there for Minimat I believe was a mistake. So at one of the cooldowns, Minimat decided to go with an adrenaline boost as opposed to going for a goon squad. So if you want to do an adrenaline boost, the better way to do that would be to go for the goon squad first and then be able to boost it out and make sure that it's protected. I mean, especially because you have 2 scavengers in this market. So if you don't defend that, it could get mutinied by somebody, and then everybody else knows it's undefended, so then you could be quite a long time before you can actually get it back.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I think he had the boost saved up from an earlier cooldown or something. It was certainly there for a while. But yeah, I totally agree that you can't necessarily use it in that way now. He does get slant drilling though, Minimat, so that's something. Silicon is suddenly very good. well, not suddenly very good. It's gradually gotten better because of all this glass that's come down. So we're going to see some people making some money off this silicon. I think Pavlos and Bogus Rogus are in it right now. Scott Caller Minimat though, first to 5, and I'm concerned for everyone else in this game that's not Minimat at least, because a scientist with a lead like this is a fairly big deal. Thinking Machines being picked up by Minimat, very quickly being picked up by Minimat because of the boosted scientific patent lab.
So take a look, let me interrupt you really quickly. Take a look at Scott Call's base. So this is going to be a real issue. Scott Call added 2 more water-consuming resources.
Ooh, yes.
And you look at the price of water, and there is... That's going to be hard to, well, I guess, they're shipping that water,
that's
other water
such
from
a long way.
really, really far away.
Yeah. So those 2 water tiles in the southwest combined are 2 fuel a second. So
yeah, look at that.
So like literally half of the profits that are coming from this electrolysis reactor, from these 4 electrolysis reactors, are going into shipping this fuel, this water. So yeah, that's a big problem. Although it's very profitable, it's stuck around at. Well, I say that it crashes immediately. But yeah,
as somebody sells out of it.
yeah. So Minimat, again with the patents as the scientist, looking to be in really good shape. Another mutiny, albeit a Thinking Machines mutiny. So only 1 minute rather than 2. But still, that's going to hurt on Minimat's patent lab.
And I would like to point out that Minimat was the only person near and dear to my heart to look at the board and say, we have 1 expansive, we have 2 scavengers here, and there's a $306 a second pleasure dome
and that's
available.
Not even with virtual
that's
reality,
not even with virtual reality,
which is 3/4 of the way done, suspended at the moment. But as soon as virtual reality is done, that's going to be, what, 459? Something like that. Very profitable. Power's on its way back, though. So there's that. Oh, and that EMP. It's a scientist EMP, so it's not that big a deal. But still, that EMP. Bogus Rogus going into Pavlos as the HQ4 battle. I'm not sure about this. I think, and yeah, Minimat realizes immediately that Bogus Rogus doesn't have the income to support that. Goes into Bogus Rogus, and Bogus Rogus is forced to sell out.
Now, taking a look at that boost for Pavlos, on one hand, that's a really good boost on wind turbine, but I feel like it could have been used a little bit differently. Perhaps something like boosting out your patent lab to get, if you really wanted that nanotechnology, or more importantly, using it on something that's actually going to make you money. I think that would be a whole lot better. Paying off your debt at this particular point when you're struggling, it's HQ4, and granted, you have been targeted down very, very severely, it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's every right to feel aggrieved by the attention that he's gotten from Bogus Rogus in this game. It was fairly unfair. But yeah, I think
it was early. Yeah, those two early hits. But ultimately, using your boost to do something to make money, or to at least expand a little bit quicker, would be my preference. And I do love what Pavlos has identified. If you take a look at it, he is not auto-selling water, and he's just letting it rise. And the only thing is that if Scott Call identifies that, Scott Call is the other one that's bringing in a ton of water, even though it's really far away. So
yeah, he's boosting out his electrolysis as well. Who's running the water deficit then? Or is that just from the colony? It's probably demand from the colony. Pleasure Dome, by the way, at 570 right now for Minimat, although a second one is going down for Bogus Rogus. Going to eat into that a little bit.
But only a little bit, though.
Only a little bit. Minimat also has an off-world up, and it is launching and is protected by a goon squad and by thinking machines, and he is very sensibly, in my opinion, buying the rest of his stock up, because nobody is going to be able to outproduce him in the late game as a scientist that has a an iron patch next to him, that has a water patch next to him, that has 4 patents that are very high value. I think Minimat is in a very strong position in this game.
So, interestingly enough, if you take a look at Minimat's base, there is one tile that's very peculiar. It is a single electronics factory making $5 a second. That would be good to rotate out and just make a triangle of wind, or put a, you know, you could do something.
I think I'd turn it into like an optimization center or something like that. I think that's what I'd do.
Or you could even do a hacker array for that particular point, because people are running deficits on things, so you could make life really difficult on them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this electronics factory is just a straight up mistake, I think. Especially, I mean, yeah, if you're a robot, maybe that makes sense. But he's not a robot; he's a scientist. So yeah. So
after Minimat ends up, let's see what Minimat's cash looks like. 60K, and it's 113K in order to get another off-world. Honestly, what I would do instead of going for another off-world market, you go after Scott Call.
Yeah, absolutely. And Scott Call is putting up an off-world as well. Where is that off-world?
That's down near their carbon down there.
Oh yes, I see.
That cost a lot of money for Scott Call.
Yeah, wow, because carbon's at 110. So yeah, $163,000 right now for an off-world for Scott Call. That is a lot of money, albeit it's only going to be 3 launches until it pays for itself. But even so, that's a big deal.
So unfortunately, those scavengers just can't get that off-world up, you know, quite as easily. I mean, my target right now is you've got to go into Scott Call as quickly as you can to try to see if you can, you know, make that happen. That being said, Pavlos is another fantastic target.
Yeah, with an expansive, building an off-world. Scott Call's cheaper, but Pavlos might be better. And yeah, just the amount of income that Minimat has right now is pretty big. I think, has Minimat been cooking books as well? I feel like maybe they have, yeah. So, wow, way back on Sol 4, Minimat cooked the books. And I feel like that's going to pay dividends now, because that debt is going to be prevented from multiplying. He's going to stay around about the B level of debt, despite having almost 140,000 of it. And it's just going to be really good for them. Second off-world going up. Where's that one? That's Goond, and it's just to the west of the base. So yeah, I think Minimat is going to be able to complete this buy on Pavlos, and I think is in a very, very strong position to take this final game and the tournament as a consequence.
So I'll say that I can't necessarily fault Minimat for going after Pavlos, because, you know, between Scott Call and Pavlos, it's definitely an attractive, you know, proposition to go after an expansive that has all of those tiles. That being said, there is something to be said about taking out one of those scavengers that can keep hitting you over and over with slowdown strikes, which can still be, you know, kind of painful. I still think I'm assuming that Minimat probably identified Pavlos as the greater threat long term.
Yeah.
In terms of the in terms of this, so I can certainly appreciate going that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's kind of close, honestly. Like, on the one hand, Pavlos has no optimizations at all. Scott Call has optimizations, albeit not in anything really that's making very much money. I'm really surprised more people aren't in this electronics market, because it's really, really good right now. Pavlos is in a bunch of electronics. They're making 200 a second, even without being optimized. So yeah, that's a really good market to be in. I guess Minimat does have that triangle now, and Minimat is making a bunch of money from that now as well.
So another point to think about, though, in that discussion between going after Pavlos versus Scott Call, remember, Scott Call was in a lot more debt, and now Scott Call is actually going into his second. So there is an argument to be going for the other way in terms of taking out somebody that has a lot of black market potential for using it, and get 2 off-worlds with a cheaper stock price.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Although, again, I think the caveat applies that any move Minimat makes into somebody else's stock at this point is a good one. And
that's correct.
They're far enough ahead, honestly, that like it's going to be really difficult. Pretty much whatever they do. for anyone to threaten in the late game. So Scott Call and Bogus Rogus have also both cooked the books, which is kind of interesting. They're all in C levels of debt now. All of those three are in C levels of debt. Scott Call and Bogus Rogus falling into D.
Oh.
And Scott Call just paid down a bunch of debt as well. But
So
after
this is after the debt. This is a place where it's worth it to pick up a mutiny and just sit on it a little bit. So if somebody falls into that D level debt, take a look at their spies, just wait a little bit, and then you can keep their. This would actually be a great place for a mutiny goon if you can afford it.
Yeah, if you can afford it, and if you can afford the cooldowns, that's the deal there. Minimat's about to buy Pavlos. Pavlots is making Minimat's job even easier to finish this game by buying into Bogus Rogus and giving Minimat a free piece of stock as soon as they complete that buy. Minimat now has 4 off-worlds under their control, 2 of which are mutinied. I think this game is rapidly reaching its conclusion.
So one of the things, let's take a look at each of the bases and just see what they might have been able to do differently. You look at Pavlos's base, and they've been in that power the entire time, and now they've gotten out of some of the life support. I think that they were in power for way too long of a time in the southern portion of their base, and there was a long time where power wasn't very profitable, and those are important tiles that could be used for something else. So I think that was, and combined with the fact that they just got beaten on early on, it didn't really help. But
yeah, and look at these. So these electronics are really profitable. But can you imagine if Pavlos had a single optimization center and just put like 2 pips or 3 pips into electronics? Just how much money he would be making right now.
Well, the reason that electronics is so profitable, besides the colony consuming it, is he was hacking it.
He's hacking it, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
just like
right.
the benefits of an optimization center, they're just so huge.
Absolutely. So the next target for Minimat should be Bogus Rogus, who's in a bunch of debt issues.
To give the other players credit, they are doing the correct thing in this case and ganging up on the leader. Minimat, the very clear leader in this game, is going to have to choose who to buy, and I guess whoever. And yeah, they're splitting the stock reasonably well, equally between them. And Scott Call has quite a lot of money, although Bogus Rogus just sold out. So I think the fact that happened, and yeah, they're going into Scott Call instead. And I think the fact that happened functionally ends this game, because I think Minimat is going to have no problem at all now. Finishing off Scott Call, getting their stock back, and then finishing off Bogus Rogus as well.
Okay, so let's take a look next at Scott Call in terms of what they did well and what they could improve on. I think the first thing is it was a giant overcommitment to water that's 4 tiles away from your base, and unfortunately doing that just ends up really hurting you. In addition to that, they were out of carbon for a really long time, so then when they went to the off-world, they had to buy up carbon in order to make that happen. And it ended up spiking the carbon price, but I think staying in the carbon for a little bit longer and maybe trying to make some sort of... I'm trying to think of what else they could do. They had a decent spot, with the exception of the water was a really difficult one. So
yeah, I mean, it comes back to the found, doesn't it? Really, like the water was too far away. The fact that Scott Call went so heavily into water meant that he was shipping it all the way across the map. And yeah, it's using 3 fuel a second. Those 2 in the southwest are using 3 fuel a second. The 2 in the north are using 1 fuel a second. There's the win, there's the finish from Minimat. So Minimat it is who takes out this tournament. They have won 4 out of the 5 games, and this final game really was all about the found. We identified the science spot in the northeast as probably the best thing on the map, and Minimat able to take that one out. And yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a shame that Pavlos got zeroed out, as it were, in the first couple of levels, because they were running so far behind in the mid game that they weren't ever really able to recover. But yeah, I mean, it's. I think every game that we've seen, Black Magic has been really competitive, and it's really good to see that for the most part, I think all of the players that we've seen, or the vast majority of the players that we've seen, sort of have the sort of basic ideas down, right? Like it's
Yes.
it's really encouraging to see that.
Let's finish up on our last player, Bogus Rogus, just to take a look at things that they could improve on, things they did well. They kept a lot of their claims close to their base, which is fantastic. What I would say is, in terms of where they founded, it would have been better to found in the middle of the crater as opposed to against this ledge. You would get the same amount of carbon that they had before, but then you have a little bit more room to spread out and make triangles versus they had to make several diamonds in order to make things work.
Yeah,
in
that's
general,
true.
they kept all their claims relatively close, with the exception of they did do the one thing that Blues doesn't really believe in, and that's taking two different remote claims for silicon. Typically,
Yeah.
one claim suffices, and at any particular point, his main point was always, at some point, you're not going to be in something that demands silicon. So even if you're running a deficit for a while, eventually it'll end up catching up. So just pushing up a little bit more for Bogus Rogus, and having the room to keep all those claims around but make separate triangles, I think definitely would have helped. So.
Yeah, and I mean, in fairness, the silicon was good for pretty much all of the game.
Mm-hmm.
The given how high glass was for most of the game, given how high electronics were for most of the game, the silicon was pretty profitable. But yeah, it's a big commitment into that, and you've got to really make sure that you need that silicon for the whole game before you do it.
And then finally, just to talk about Minimat, what they did fantastic was they identified, arguably, well, not even arguably, they got the best spot on the map, in my opinion, and it was definitely worth more than what they had paid for it. And they were able to get slant drilling. All of the life support was high all game. They identified, potentially the second strongest person because, say Scott Collin, Bogus Rogus had a little bit of debt issues, and so they were able to cruise to the victory to be able to, they just kept all of their claims. If you look at their base, almost all of the claims are right next to the base. So, that's one of the advantages of having a scientist. You didn't have, you could make money off of all of that fuel cost that everyone else was consuming to ship that water, to ship all the silicon, et cetera, and so that's what really pushed them through. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And this pleasure dome, by the way, I just want to point out, made $300,000. $300,000 over the course of the game.
I will never get tired of you pointing at a pleasure dome.
Well, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much, Blackmagic.
Thank you very much.
For the co-casting, and thank you to all the players. The full results, I guess, will be on the spreadsheet. I'll link the spreadsheet in chat now. Minimap with the win, 4 points, Pavlos with 3, Scott Core with 2, and then a 5-way tie that the tie-break goes to Bogus Rogus on 1 point. Then Antario, Cheesecake, NL, Rahi, and Vampirus, who won the round 5 Group B game on Yaren stream. So thank you all for watching. I will kill the stream now. All the VODs will be available as VODs on my Twitch channel very soon. There's also the whole broadcast obviously available as well. And yeah, don't forget the next week's casual tournament, which is, I think, same time next week on January the 14th. So we'll be around for that one as well. And yeah, come along, come and play, come and sign up, come and watch, and we'll see you then.
See you later, everybody.